struck the pavement in steady silver lines, blurring the glow of streetlights across downtown Chicago. Inside a quiet restaurant called Bellagio Terrace, a young woman sat alone at a candlelit table near the window. She checked her phone again. 7:18 p.m. He was 18 minutes late. Maya Carter sighed softly and locked her phone. Blind dates were already awkward enough. Waiting alone only made them worse. Outside, a sleek black car rolled silently to the curb. The driver stepped out, immediately, and opened the rear door. A tall man in a dark tailored coat stepped onto the sidewalk. Adrian Romano. People who knew that name spoke it carefully. At 38 years old, Adrian controlled an empire most people never saw. Nightclubs, shipping companies, construction deals, private security firms. Some legal, some less so. But Adrian didn't brag about power. He simply carried it. His phone buzzed in his hand. "Adrian, you're almost there, right?" Lucas's voice rushed through the FOD speaker. Adrian looked at the restaurant sign. Unfortunately, Lucas groaned. "Man, I swear I wouldn't ask if this wasn't important." Adrian rubbed his temple. "You set up a blind date, and now you're sending me in your place. I got pulled into a meeting. My boss would fire me if I left. That's not my problem." "Please," Lucas begged, "just explain I couldn't make it. Buy her a drink or something. She's been studying all week and deserves a decent evening." Adrian stared through the window of the restaurant. Then he saw her, a woman sitting alone by the window, candlelight reflecting softly against her skin. Her curly hair framed her face in a way that looked effortless. She wore a simple dark dress, elegant without trying too hard. She wasn't scrolling endlessly through her phone like most people waiting alone. Instead, she was calmly reading a small book. Something about that detail caught Adrian's attention. "What's her name again?" Adrian asked. "Maya," Lucas said. Adrian exhaled slowly. "Finn, I'll explain and leave. You're a lifesaver." The call ended. Adrian stepped inside the restaurant. The hostess immediately recognized him. People always did. "Good evening, Mr. Romano." He gave a polite nod. "Table by the window." "Of course." But Adrian was already walking. Maya looked up just as he reached the table. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, the noise of the restaurant faded into the background. Maya blinked once, studying him with curious calm rather than nervous excitement. "Lucas?" she asked. Adrian pulled out the chair across from her. "No," he said honestly. "Lucas couldn't make it tonight." Her expression shifted slightly, but she didn't seem offended. "Oh, he asked me to come explain so you wouldn't think he just disappeared." Maya closed her book gently. "Well, that's thoughtful of him. And inconvenient for you," Adrian added. She smiled faintly. "I've had worse evenings." Adrian almost left then. He had done what Lucas asked, but something about Maya's relaxed presence made the idea of walking away feel unfinished. The waiter appeared. "Would you like anything to drink?" Adrian glanced at Maya. "Wine?" She nodded. "Sure." The waiter left again. Maya folded her hands together on the table. "So, if you're not Lucas, who are you?" "Adrian." "Just Adrian?" "For now." She laughed softly. "That sounds mysterious. It's not meant to." "Well, Adrian, since you already rescued this awkward situation, you might as well stay until so." The wine arrives. Adrian studied her face. Most people acted differently around him. Nervous, curious, sometimes intimidated. Maya didn't. She looked at him the way people look at strangers on airplanes. Neutral. "Open. All right," Adrian said finally. The wine arrived. Maya lifted the glass. "To unexpected evenings." Adrian clinked lightly. "To honesty." They drank. "So," Maya said, leaning back slightly. "What do you do, Adrian? Business?" "What kind?" "The boring kind." She raised, eyebrow. "That's the least convincing answer I've heard all week." Adrian allowed a small smile. "And what do you do?" "I'm studying architecture at Northwestern." "Architecture?" "Yes." She leaned forward, her eyes lighting up. "Cities are like living organisms. Every building tells a story about the people who built it." Adrian listened quietly. She spoke passionately about design, history, public spaces, and the way architecture shaped human behavior. It had been years since Adrian listened, so to someone talk about something they genuinely loved. Most conversations in his world were about money, power, or threats. Maya talked about imagination. "You know what I love most about architecture?" she said. "What?" "The idea that something you build might still be standing 100 years after you're gone." Adrian considered that. "In my world, things rarely last that long." Maya tilted her head. "Your world sounds dramatic. Sometimes dangerous, occasionally, instead of reacting so." With fear, Maya simply studied him more carefully. "You have that look." "What look?" "The look of someone who carries a lot of responsibility." Adrian chuckled softly. "That's one way to describe it." The restaurant slowly filled with evening chatter, but their table felt strangely separate from the rest of the room. Maya checked the time again. "Well, I guess Lucas really isn't coming." "No, his loss." Adrian felt a strange warmth in his chest. "Maiba," she smiled at him. "You know what's so funny?" "What?" "I almost canceled this date tonight." "Why?" "I had a big presentation this morning and barely slept, but you came anyway." "Yes." She paused. "Now I'm glad I did." Adrian leaned back in his chair. For a moment, he forgot about the messages waiting on his phone, forgot about the men who depended on his decisions, forgot about the enemies constantly watching him. Right now, he was just a man sharing wine with a woman who didn't know anything about his reputation, and strangely so. That felt good. The night continued. Conversation flowed easily. They talked about music, childhood memories, travel. By the time Adrian checked his watch again, nearly 2 hours had passed. Maya blinked in surprise. "Wow, I didn't realize it was that late." Adrian stood as she gathered her coat. Outside, the rain had stopped. The cool night air brushed against them as they stepped onto the sidewalk. Maya noticed the black car waiting nearby. "You Rita?" "Yes." She looked back at Adrian so thoughtfully. "You know something?" "What?" "You're definitely not just a boring businessman." Adrian smirked slightly. "I never said I was boring." She laughed. "Fair point." A subway entrance sat across the street. Maya turned toward it. "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Maya." She took a few steps, then stopped. Turning back, she smiled. "I'm actually glad Lucas canceled." Then she disappeared down the subway stairs. Adrian stood still. The driver approached carefully. "Sir?" Adrian didn't respond immediately. He was still staring at the empty sidewalk, because something unexpected had happened tonight, something dangerous. For the first time in years, Adrian Romano felt something beyond control, interest, curiosity, maybe even something deeper, and that realization sent a quiet warning through his mind. Because men like Adrian didn't fall in love, especially not with women who had no idea what kind of world they were stepping into. Yet as Adrian finally got into the car, thought remained clear in his mind. He wanted to see Maya Carter again. He just didn't know yet how much that single decision would change everything. The next morning, Adrian Romano woke before sunrise, something he rarely did without reason. For years, his mornings had followed the same pattern: black coffee, news reports, briefings from his men about shipments, finances, and the quiet chess game constantly unfolding between rival organizations. Routine meant control, but this morning felt so different. Because instead of reviewing numbers or security reports, Adrian sat at the large window of his penthouse, staring down at the waking city, thinking about a woman he had met only once, Maya Carter. The memory replayed clearly in his mind, the way she spoke about architecture, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about designing buildings that could outlive their creators. Adrian had met thousands of people in his life: politicians, dealers, lawyers, enemies pretending to be allies. But Maya had spoken to him without calculation, without fear, without trying to gain something from him. His phone buzzed. "Morning, boss," Marco said as he walked into the room carrying a tablet. Marco had been Adrian's right hand for almost 15 years, loyal, sharp, and cautious. "You're up early." Adrian didn't look away from the window. "What's on the schedule?" Marco checked the screen. "Meeting with the Port Authority at 10. Lunch with Councilman Harper and the investors from New York. Arrive tonight." Adrian nodded slowly. "Cancel lunch." Marco blinked. "Cancel lunch?" "Yes." "With Harper?" "Yes." Marco stared at him, confused. Adrian never canceled meetings with politicians. "What's the reason?" Marco asked carefully. Adrian finally turned. "I have something else to do." Marco didn't push further, but the curiosity was obvious. "What kind of something?" Adrian simply walked past him. "Personal." Across the city, Maya Carter stood in a quiet studio classroom surrounded by, say, architectural models. She adjusted a small piece of foam board on her project, while her classmate Danielle leaned against the table watching her. "So," Danielle said casually, "tell me about the mysterious guy from last night." Maya smiled without looking up. "Not mysterious. You said he showed up instead of your blind date." "Yes, that's mysterious." Maya laughed softly. "His name's Adrian. Last name?" "I didn't ask." Danielle stared at her. "You spent 2 hours talking to a guy, so..." "Didn't ask his last name?" "It didn't feel important." Danielle rolled her eyes. "Okay, but was he cute at least?" Maya paused. "Very." Danielle immediately leaned forward. "Ah, there it is. But something about him was complicated." "What do you mean?" Maya thought for a moment. He seemed calm, confident, but also like he carried the weight of 1,000 decisions. Danielle smirked. "Sounds hot." Maya shook her head. "That's not what I meant." Still, she couldn't deny something about Adrian, so had lingered in her thoughts all morning. His quiet confidence, the way he listened instead of dominating the conversation, the strange honesty in his eyes. Her phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. Maya hesitated before answering. "Hello? Good morning, Maya?" She froze slightly. That voice. "Adrian?" "Yes." "How did you get my number?" "Lucas." She laughed. "Of course." There was a brief pause. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," Adrian said. "I'm in class, but we're on a break." "It's good." Another pause. Maya leaned against the table. "So, why are you calling?" Adrian hesitated just long enough to make the moment feel real. "Because I'd like to see you again." Danielle's eyes widened across the table, silently screaming excitement. Maya turned away slightly. "Already? Is that too soon?" She considered the question. "No, just unexpected." "Would you have dinner with me tonight?" Adrian asked calmly. Maya raised an eyebrow. "You move fast. I don't like wasting time." She smiled. "I noticed." Another moment passed. Then she said softly, "Okay." Across the city, Adrian allowed himself a small breath of relief. 7 o'clock? "All right. I'll send a car." "No," Maya replied quickly. Adrian paused. "No? I prefer meeting people halfway," she said. "Text me the location." Adrian couldn't help smiling slightly. "Fair enough." They ended the call. Danielle practically exploded the second Maya lowered the phone. "Whoa, you say?" Maya laughed. "I told you, Adrian. So, you're going out with him again tonight?" "Yes. Girl, this is already a movie." Maya shrugged playfully. "Maiba." But deep down she felt something unfamiliar too. Excitement. That evening, Adrian arrived at the restaurant early, a quiet rooftop lounge overlooking the skyline. Marco approached him near the table. "Boss." "Yes?" "I checked into the girl." Adrian frowned slightly. "I didn't ask you to." "I know," Marco said carefully, "but I did anyway." Adrian sighed. "What did you find?" "Her name's Maya Carter. Graduate student. No criminal record. No suspicious connections." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" Marco nodded. "She's clean." Adrian looked out over the city lights. For some reason, hearing that made him feel relieved. Then Marco added quietly, "But boss, if you keep seeing her, people will notice." Adrian turned. "So, you have enemies." "Imawar." Marco's voice lowered. and enemies look for weaknesses. Adrian held his gaze. She's not a weakness. Marco didn't argue, but his silence said everything. At that moment, the elevator doors opened. Maya stepped onto the rooftop. She wore a dark green dress, her curls falling naturally over her shoulders. For a brief second, even the hardened men standing around Adrian seemed to pause. Adrian stood slowly. Maya walked toward him with a warm smile. Hey, Hi, Maya. She glanced around the elegant rooftop. Okay, this is definitely fancier than last night. Adrian chuckled softly. I thought you deserved a better first date. She raised an eyebrow. First date? Yes. What was last night? A very lucky accident. Maya laughed, and just like that, the tension faded. But neither of them noticed the black SUV parked across the street below. Inside it, a man watched the rooftop through binoculars. He lowered them slowly. Well, he muttered, that's interesting. Because the Ruthless Mafia boss, who never let anyone close, had just revealed the first person who might matter to him. And in Adrian Romano's world, that kind of discovery could become very dangerous. By the time their second dinner ended, the city lights had softened into the deep quiet of midnight. Maya leaned against the railing of the rooftop terrace, looking out at Chicago's skyline. The wind brushed gently through her curls, carrying the distant sounds of traffic far below. It's beautiful up here, she said. Adrian stood beside her, hands in the pockets of his coat. Chicago looks calmer from above, he replied. Isn't it? He glanced at her. You'd be surprised how chaotic it really is. Maya smiled faintly. Cities always are. There was something peaceful about the moment two people standing quietly, neither feeling the need to fill the silence. But Adrian's phone vibrated in his pocket. He ignored it. Your phone has been buzzing all night, Maya noticed. It's nothing important. That's hard to believe. Adrian gave a small shrug. Work never stops. She studied him for a moment, curiosity returning to her eyes. You know, Maya said, most people would have left the table by now if their phone kept ringing. Most people aren't on a date with you. The comment slipped out so naturally that Maya blinked in surprise. Then she laughed softly. Smooth. Adrian smirked. Just honest. They walked toward the elevator together. As the doors closed, Maya leaned casually against the wall. Can I ask you something? Of course. What do you actually do, Adrian? He held her gaze. It was a simple question, but answering honestly would open a door he wasn't ready to open. I manage investments, he said finally. Maya tilted her head slightly. That still sounds vague. It's meant to. The elevator reached the lobby. They stepped outside into the cool night air. The same black car waited nearby. Maya noticed it again. You really do travel with a driver everywhere? It's convenient. Or secretive, Adrian chuckled. You ask a lot of questions. I'm an architecture student, said. We're trained to notice details. He admired that about her. The way she observed the world carefully instead of rushing through it. But as they stood near the curb, something shifted in Adrian's instincts, a feeling he trusted more than logic. Someone was watching. He subtly scanned the street. A dark SUV across the road. Parked too long. Engine still running. His jaw tightened slightly. Maya noticed the change immediately. What's wrong? Nothing. But Adrian stepped closer to her, without thinking. Protectively. Your subway entrance is still 2 blocks away? He asked. Yes. I'll walk you. You don't have to. I want to. They started walking down the quiet sidewalk. Streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. For a moment, everything felt almost normal. Almost like Adrian was just another man walking a woman home after dinner. Then Maya said something that caught him off guard. You know, I looked you up today. Adrian's eyes flicked toward her. And? I couldn't find much. That's not surprising, but I did find one article. Adrian felt a quiet tension settle in his chest. What article? Something about Romano Holdings, construction investments, real estate projects. That's one of my companies. Maya nodded thoughtfully, but the article said something interesting. What's that? That you rarely appear in public. Adrian stayed silent, and the journalist described you as... She hesitated. Go on. A man who prefers operating from the shadows. Adrian chuckled lightly. Journalists love dramatic language. Maya smiled. Maya B. They reached the subway entrance. Maya turned to face him. Well, mysterious investment man, thank you for dinner. You're welcome. She studied him for a moment. You're still hiding something. Adrian didn't deny it. I hide many things. Should I be worried? For the first time, Adrian hesitated, because the honest answer was complicated. But he simply said, no. Maya held his gaze a moment. Longer. Then she smiled. All right. She stepped toward the subway stairs, but before disappearing, she turned back again. Adrian, yes, I'm glad you came to that blind date. He smiled faintly. So am I. She disappeared down the stairs. Adrian remained standing there, watching the entrance long after she was gone. Behind him, Marco's car rolled quietly to the curb. Marco stepped out. You felt it too, Marco said. Adrian nodded once. The SUV. Yes, same one that followed us from the restaurant. Adrian looked down the street again. The SUV was gone now. Marco crossed his arms. I ran the plates and… Fake. Adrian's expression hardened slightly. Rossi? Most likely. Victor Rossi, the only rival powerful enough and reckless enough to spy on Adrian directly. Marco lowered his voice. If Rossi's watching you, it means he thinks you're vulnerable. Adrian's jaw tightened. I'm not. Marco glanced toward the subway entrance where Maya had disappeared. Boss, I need to ask something. Adrian didn't respond. Are you planning to keep seeing her? Silence stretched for several seconds. Finally, Adrian said quietly, yes. Marco sighed. You know what that means. Adrian did. In his world, affection was a liability. Caring about someone gave enemies a target. Yet the thought of walking away from Maya felt strangely impossible. Adrian stepped into the car. Have security keep a distance, he ordered. For her? Yes. Marco nodded. But as the car pulled away, neither man realized something far more dangerous had already begun. Across the city, inside a dim office filled with cigarette smoke, Victor Rossi studied a photograph spread across his desk. The photo showed Adrian and Maya standing together outside the restaurant earlier that evening. Rossi smiled slowly. Well now, he leaned back in his chair. The great Adrian Romano finally has a weakness. And in the dangerous world Adrian controlled, weaknesses didn't stay safe for long. The first sign that something had changed came 3 days later. Maya was leaving the university library just after sunset, balancing a stack of architecture books against her chest while trying to text Danielle at the same time. The campus sidewalks were nearly empty. Midterms were approaching, which meant most students were buried inside study rooms. Her phone buzzed. Adrian, dinner tonight? Maya smiled without realizing it. She had seen Adrian every evening since their second date. Coffee one day, a quiet walk, along the river the next. Then a late dinner after one of her presentations. Each time she discovered something new about him. He listened more than he spoke. He never bragged. And somehow he always seemed watchful. She texted back, Maya, I have studio work until 9. 3 dots appeared instantly. Adrian, I'll wait. Her smile widened. But as she stepped toward the parking area behind campus, she noticed something strange. A black SUV idling near the exit. Its headlights were off. The driver remained hidden behind dark glass. Maya slowed slightly, feeling an odd chill. Maybe it belonged to someone picking up a student. She continued walking. The SUV didn't move. But the moment she reached the street corner, it slowly rolled forward. Not fast, not aggressive, just following. Maya frowned. She turned down another block. The SUV followed again. Her pulse quickened. Okay, that's weird. She stopped suddenly near a streetlight and turned around. The SUV immediately pulled to the curb if parking. The engine remained running, but no one stepped out. Maya stared at it for several seconds, then shook her head and walked quickly toward the subway entrance. She didn't know why the situation felt unsettling, but something about it stayed in her mind the entire train ride home. Across the city, Adrian Romano sat in his office reviewing financial reports when Marco entered quickly. "Boss." Adrian looked up immediately. Marco only moved that fast when something was wrong. "What is so? It?" Marco placed a tablet on the desk. A security photo appeared on the screen. It showed Maya walking down the campus sidewalk earlier that evening, and behind her, the black SUV. Adrian's expression darkened instantly. "You were supposed to keep distance," Adrian said coldly. "We did," Marco replied. "That's not ours." Silence filled the room. "Rossi?" Adrian asked quietly. Marco nodded. "Our people spotted the same vehicle near the university twice this week." Adrian's jaw tightened. "He's testing." "Yes, Rossi wasn't attacking." "Not yet. He was studying, learning, looking for patterns, weaknesses." Adrian stood slowly. "That ends now." Marco watched him carefully. "Boss, if Rossi knows about her, keeping her close could make things worse." Adrian's voice lowered. "Imawar." But his eyes remained fixed on the photo of Maya, calm. Unawar, completely outside the dangerous world he lived in, and now she was standing right at its edge. Adrian grabbed his coat. "Where are you going?" Marco asked. "To talk to her." Maya was sitting on her couch sketching a building concept when someone knocked on her apartment door. She checked the clock. 9:42 p.m. She wasn't expecting anyone. Another knock. "Who is it?" "It's Adrian." Her eyebrows lifted. She opened the door immediately. Adrian stood there looking unusually serious. "Hi," she said. He stepped inside. "Hey." She noticed the tension in his posture right away. "What's wrong?" Adrian looked around her small apartment. Architecture sketches covered the walls. Books everywhere. A half-finished model sat on the kitchen table. It felt warm, honest, completely different from the cold, controlled spaces he normally lived in. "Maya," he said carefully, "did something happen tonight while you were leaving campus?" She blinked. "What do you mean? Did you notice anyone following you?" Her expression changed. "How did you know that?" Adrian's stomach tightened. "You were followed?" "I think so. There was a black SUV behind me." Adrian closed his eyes briefly, exactly what he feared. "Adrian," Maya said slowly, "what's going on?" He didn't answer immediately. For the first time since they met, Adrian Romano looked conflicted. Finally he spoke. "There are things about my life I haven't told you." "I figured that, but those things can sometimes make situations complicated." Maya crossed her arms. "That's a very polite way of saying dangerous." Adrian met her gaze. "Yes." Silence stretched between them. Maya studied him carefully. "You're not just an investor, are you?" Adrian shook his head. "No, then what are you?" He hesitated, not because he was afraid to say it, but because saying it might push her away forever. Yet lying now would only make things worse. "I run an organization," Adrian said quietly. "What kind of organization?" "A powerful one." Maya stared at him. "And the people following me? They're connected to someone who wants to hurt me." Her heartbeat quickened. "And they think I'm—" "What? Your girlfriend?" Adrian didn't answer. That silence was answer enough. Maya took a step back. "You said I didn't need to worry. I didn't think Rossi would move this quickly." "Rossi? My rival?" The word hung heavily in the air. Maya ran a hand through her hair. "Okay." "Wow." She paced across the room, trying to process everything. "So let me get this straight," she said finally. "You're involved in something dangerous. Someone is watching you. And now they're watching me, too." "Yes." "And you waited until now to tell me?" Adrian's voice softened. "I wanted to protect you from this world." Maya stopped pacing. "And did that work?" Adrian didn't respond. Her frustration slowly faded, because despite everything, she could see something genuine in his eyes. Concern. Real concern. "For what it's worth," Maya said quietly, "I never thought you were normal." Adrian blinked. "That's comforting," she sighed. "But I also didn't think my life would turn into a crime." "Drama." Adrian stepped closer. "I can make sure you're safe." "How?" My people will protect you, and that won't make things worse. It might. Maya shook her head slightly. Adrian, this is crazy. Yes. Silence returned. Then she asked the question he feared most. Is this why you really came tonight? Yes. Because you think I'm in danger. Yes. Another long pause passed. Then Maya said something that surprised him. You should have told me sooner. Adrian frowned slightly. You're not angry? Oh, I'm definitely angry, she said. But I'm also not stupid. She stepped closer to him. I knew there was something bigger behind those mysterious answers of yours. Adrian studied her face. You're not scared? I am. She smiled faintly. But I'm more annoyed that someone thinks they can scare me away from my own life. Adrian couldn't help it. He laughed softly. And for the first time that night, the tension eased slightly. But deep down, he knew the situation had already crossed a dangerous line. Because once enemies noticed someone important to you, they rarely stopped watching. And somewhere across the city, Victor Rossi was already planning his next move. The rain returned 3 nights later. Chicago's skyline disappeared behind thick gray clouds as thunder rolled across the city. Streets emptied early, most people rushing home to avoid the storm. But inside Adrian Romano's office, the atmosphere was far more tense than the weather outside. Marco placed his phone on the desk. They took her. The words landed like a gunshot in the room. Adrian stood slowly from his chair. Explain. Marco's voice stayed calm, but his eyes were hard. Maya left the university studio an hour ago. Our security team was following at a distance like you ordered. And 2 vehicles boxed her car in near Grant Street. Professional job. Fast. Adrian's jaw tightened. Rossi. Marco nodded. Te left a message. He handed Adrian the phone. A photo appeared on the screen. Maya sitting in a chair inside what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Her hands tied, but she wasn't hurt. Yet, below the image was a single text. You finally have something worth losing. Come get her, alone. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. For years, enemies had threatened him, attacked his businesses, even tried to assassinate him. But this was different. This time, they touched something that mattered. Marco spoke carefully. Boss, this is a trap, I know. Rossi wants you walking into that warehouse. Adrian grabbed his coat, and he'll get exactly that. Marco stepped forward. Adrian, think for a second. I am. You go in alone, Rossi might kill you. Adrian's voice turned quiet. Then we make sure he doesn't. Marco studied him. For the first time in 15 years, Adrian Romano looked furious. Not the cold, calculated anger Marco was used to. This was personal. Prepare the team, Adrian ordered. But Rossi said I know what he said. Adrian's eyes hardened. But Rossi doesn't get to make the rules. The warehouse sat near the river docks, surrounded by empty shipping yards and rusted containers, perfect for an ambush. Adrian's car rolled slowly down the dark street, headlights cutting through the rain. Marco's voice crackled through the earpiece hidden in Adrian's collar. Snipers in position. 5 guards outside the building. Possibly more inside. Adrian stepped out of the car. Stay back until I give the signal. Copy that. The warehouse doors stood partially open. Inside, a single overhead light illuminated the center of the room. Maya sat tied to a chair beneath it, and beside her stood Victor Rossi, tall, gray suit, cigar in hand. Rossi smiled when Adrian walked in. Well. Adrian stopped 10 feet away. Let her go. Rossi laughed. You always were direct. Maya looked up at Adrian. Despite the situation, her voice remained steady. Hey. Adrian's chest tightened slightly. Are you hurt? No. Good. So. Rossi clapped slowly. Look at this. The ruthless Adrian Romano. Worried about someone else. His smile turned mocking. I never thought I'd see the day. Adrian's voice stayed calm. You're making a mistake. Oh, Rossi said. Yes. And what mistake is that? Adrian stepped closer. You think she's my weakness. Rossi shrugged. Isn't she? Adrian's expression didn't change. But behind Rossi, unseen in the shadows of the upper rafters, Marco and two snipers waited silently. Let her go. So, Adrian repeated. Rossi walked around Maya slowly. You know, Adrian, I spent years trying to find your weakness. He stopped beside her, and all it took was one blind date. Maya rolled her eyes. Wow, that's really the dramatic villain speech you're going with? Rossi blinked, then laughed. I like her. Adrian didn't move. You've made your point, Adrian said. Have I? Rossi stepped closer to Maya. You see, Adrian, power isn't about money or territory. He leaned down beside her. It's about control. Adrian's voice dropped to a deadly calm. Last chance, Rossi smiled. Or what? Adrian looked up toward the rafters. Now. 3 red laser dots instantly appeared across Rossi's chest. Rossi froze. From the shadows above, Marco's voice echoed calmly. Drop the weapon. The guards around the warehouse suddenly realized they were surrounded. More red laser sights appeared across the room. Rossi slowly raised his hands. You cheated, he muttered. Adrian walked forward. Adapted. He untied Maya's hands. You okay? She rubbed her wrists. Next time, can we just go to dinner like normal people? Adrian smiled slightly. I'll try. Behind them, Marco secured Rossi and his men. The threat was over. Just like that. 2 weeks later, the city returned to normal. Rossi's operation collapsed without its leader. Adrian's empire stood stronger than ever. But on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Adrian Romano sat on a park bench watching Maya examine the design of a small doll. Public pavilion she had been sketching. You're staring again, she said without looking up. I'm thinking. About what? Adrian leaned back slightly. For most of my life, everything was about power. And now? Now I'm wondering if maybe building something lasting matters more. Maya smiled. Like architecture? Maybe. She closed her sketchbook and looked at him. You know what I realized? What? You showed up at that blind date for your friend. Yes. And somehow you ended up changing your entire life. Adrian nodded slowly. Sometimes the most important moments happen by accident. Maya leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Best blind date ever. Adrian laughed quietly. The ruthless mafia boss who once trusted no one had discovered something unexpected. Love didn't weaken power. Sometimes it gave life meaning. And sometimes all it took was one strange night, one unexpected meeting, and one person brave enough to walk into a complicated world. Because even so, the most powerful men can fall in love at first sight. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Cinematic Mafia Love for more powerful stories like this. Your support keeps these stories alive.